I'm a very sensitive person, and I'm a very deep person. So I've had to wear my heart on my sleeve, you know, for a long time now. And I cry easier than I used to.
Why would a woman as loved as Dolly Parton turn down America's highest civilian honor, hide her arms from the world, and refuse to be seen without makeup? For decades, people saw the glitter, the laughter, and the bright smile. But behind that smile was a woman who learned early in life how to protect herself. She used beauty to feel strong. She used humor to hide pain. And she used kindness to give others the comfort she once needed herself. This is not just the story of a country music superstar. It is the story of a poor little girl from the mountains of Tennessee who spent her life making the world feel warm, while quietly carrying pain she almost never talked about. To understand Dolly Parton, we have to look past the legend and go back to where her story began. The trash. Little girl from a poverty-stricken cabin. Dolly Parton was born on January 19, 1946, in the mountains of Tennessee. She was the fourth of 12 children, raised in a tiny one-room cabin with no electricity, no running water, and barely enough food to survive. In the winter, the cold pushed through the walls so hard that ice formed inside the windows. Several children shared the same bed just to stay warm. Her father worked non-stop, but still struggled to feed the family. Her mother tried to comfort the children with songs when there was nothing else to give them. At school, Dolly was mocked for her homemade clothes and worn-out shoes. Years later, she admitted something that stayed with her forever. "I knew we were poor. I just didn't know I was supposed to be ashamed of it until I saw how other people looked at me." But inside that poverty, music became her escape. She wrote her first song at 7. By 10, she was singing on local radio. At 13, she stood on the stage of the Grand Ole Opry, terrified but determined. And yet when she returned home, there were still nights with only cornbread and beans on the table. Lying awake in that crowded cabin, listening to her exhausted father worry about how to feed 12 children, Dolly made a promise to herself. She had to get out. So in 1964, one day after graduating high school, she left Tennessee with $20, a guitar, and a cardboard suitcase. The poorest little girl in Locust Ridge boarded a bus to Nashville. She believed she was leaving poverty behind. What she did not know was that some wounds would follow her for the rest of her life. The Invisible Man and a 60-year marriage. On her very first day in Nashville, Dolly Parton walked into a laundromat with a small bag of clothes and almost no idea what came next. She was broke, exhausted, and trying to start a new life. That was where she met Carl Thomas Dean. Carl was just 21 years old, standing beside a washing machine when he noticed the young girl with the big blonde hair and nervous smile. Years later, his mother would remember the first thing he told her after meeting Dolly. "Mama, I just met the girl I'm going to marry." A few months later, they were engaged. As Dolly struggled to break into country music and faced rejection after rejection, Carl stayed beside her quietly. He was not connected to the music business. He could not open doors for her. But he gave her something she desperately needed back then: stability. They married in 1966 in a small private ceremony with almost nobody there. And over the next 60 years, Carl Dean became one of the greatest mysteries in celebrity culture. He avoided cameras, interviews, award shows, and almost every part of Dolly's public life. While she became one of the most famous women in America, Carl stayed home in Tennessee running his asphalt business and living as privately as possible. People spent decades wondering if he even existed. But behind the scenes, their marriage became Dolly's safe place. Whenever she returned home from touring, Carl would cook the same simple meal she grew up eating in poverty: soup, beans, and cornbread. It was his quiet way of reminding her that beneath the fame, she was still the same little girl from the Smoky Mountains. Dolly once joked that Carl had never even listened to one of her albums all the way through, but she also called him the greatest husband she could have ever dreamed of. Their marriage survived because it was built on trust, distance, and privacy. But even with Carl beside her, there were wounds inside Dolly that success, fame, and even love could never completely heal. The heartbreak of never being a mother. In 1980, 9 to 5 turned Dolly Parton into more than a country star. It made her a cultural icon. The song topped the charts. The film, with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin, became a massive success. Dolly was nominated for an Oscar, and to millions of women, she looked fearless, funny, and unstoppable. But behind the bright smile and the rhinestones, her body was beginning to fail her. In the early 1980s, Dolly started suffering from serious gynecological problems. By 1984, doctors told her she needed a partial hysterectomy. When she woke up from surgery, she understood what it meant. The dream of having a child of her own was gone forever. For Dolly, that loss cut deeper than most people knew. Years later, she admitted that she cried for months and kept much of the pain to herself. She felt broken in a way fame could not fix. It was not just a medical procedure. It was the end of a future she had quietly imagined for years. Many women understand that kind of grief without needing it explained. It is the pain of losing something the world never saw you holding. Over time, Dolly tried to turn that heartbreak into love. She poured herself into children who were not her own. She became a godmother, a mentor, and eventually a source of comfort for millions of young people through her charity work. But before that healing came, there was a very dark season. Behind the laughter, the wigs, and the perfect makeup, Dolly was fighting a private despair almost no one could see. And one night, the woman America loved found herself alone, wondering if she could keep going. The fateful night with the gun. In the mid-1980s, Dolly Parton seemed to have everything. The hit records, the movie roles, the money, the fame, the kind of career most artists spend their whole lives chasing. But inside, she was quietly falling apart. Her body was exhausted. Her weight changed. Her health was fragile. The press began attacking the way she looked, as if the woman who had given so much joy to the world no longer deserved kindness herself. And beneath all of that was a pain she could not outrun. She felt guilty for being away from Carl. She was grieving the child she would never have. She was tired from years of smiling when she wanted to disappear. Little by little, the woman who made everyone else feel strong began to feel like she had nothing left. For years, Dolly kept the darkest part of that season private. Then, much later in life, she finally admitted there had been a night when everything almost ended. She was alone in a room. A gun was nearby. And for a moment, the woman America loved could no longer see a way forward. Then her little dog ran into the room. It looked at her with innocent eyes, as if she were its entire world. And in that small, ordinary moment, something inside Dolly broke open. She thought about who would care for it, who would miss her, who still needed her. And she put the gun down. After that night, Dolly began to heal quietly. She sought help. She leaned on faith. And Carl stayed beside her in the only way he knew how, without judgment, without questions, simply present. Dolly survived that darkness, but she never forgot what it taught her, that even strong women can break, that pain does not make you weak, and that sometimes the smallest reason to stay alive is enough. But there was still one part of Dolly's pain the public almost never saw, the scars she kept hidden beneath the glitter. Why does she always hide herself? There is a question Dolly's fans have asked themselves for over 30 years. Why does she never take off her gloves? Why, on every single stage, is she always wearing long sleeves, arm-covering jewelry, or elbow-length gloves? The answer, when it was finally revealed, had nothing to do with fashion. Dolly suffers from a condition known as keloid scarring. Her body is marked with large scars, some likely stemming from childhood injuries back in that impoverished cabin. Each scar is a trace of poverty, of bumps and bruises, of freezing nights. She didn't want anyone to see them. She stated bluntly, "I don't want anybody's pity, so I cover them up." But that isn't the whole story. For years, Dolly's inner circle knew something the public didn't. She has numerous tattoos all over her body. Flowers, intricate patterns, little pastel roses. But she didn't get inked to show them off. She got tattooed to hide the scars. Every tattoo is a story about a pain she wanted to transform into something beautiful. And there is another secret one that leaves many both laughing and aching with sympathy. For the past 50 years, Dolly Parton has slept with a full face of makeup. She has never gone to bed barefaced. When asked why, she replied with her famous quip, "If the house burns down in the middle of the night, I still need to look good when I run out." It was a joke. But behind the punchline is a deep-seated trauma lingering from childhood, the obsession with never letting anyone see her as imperfect. It is the legacy of the years spent being called trash by kids at school. Of the years the media labeled her a dumb blonde, a joke, or just big boobs and a high voice. She fought back with humor. She said, "I'm not offended by all the dumb blonde jokes because I know I'm not dumb, and I also know that I'm not blonde." She also famously declared, "It costs a lot of money to look this cheap." The audience laughed. But it was the laughter of someone who had learned to forge their arrows into a shield. The woman who hid herself so fiercely would turn out to be the one who gave the most, and leaves behind one final secret, to be opened only when she is gone. The ultimate legacy. The 2045 letter. In 1995, Dolly launched a project that, initially, no one thought would succeed. She called it the Imagination Library, a program sending free books to every child from birth to age 5, regardless of their family's income. The inspiration came from her own childhood. Her father couldn't read. She remembered the feeling of watching him hold a book and not knowing what was inside. She wanted to ensure no child ever had to grow up feeling that way. At first, the program only operated in Sevier County, Tennessee. Today, it spans 5 countries, and the number of books gifted has surpassed 200 million. There is a story that once made Dolly break down in tears in the recording studio. In 2019, a young woman named Brittany sent a letter to Dolly's office. Brittany grew up in a poor family in Tennessee. From the age of 1, she received books from the Imagination Library every month. She wrote in her letter that those books were the only thing that pulled her out of despair. In 2019, she graduated from medical school. She wrote, "You saved my life." Dolly read the letter in the studio. She had to stop. She couldn't continue recording. She told her crew, "That child was me. I've been saved twice." The Imagination Library was not the only time Dolly gave quietly. In 2016, wildfires tore through the Smoky Mountains and left thousands of families with nothing. Dolly responded with the My People Fund. The idea was simple, direct, and deeply personal. Every family that lost their home would receive $1,000 a month for 6 months. No complicated paperwork. No long waiting period. Just help when people needed it most. In the end, more than $12 million went to families trying to rebuild their lives. Then, during the COVID crisis, another side of Dolly's generosity came into view. She donated $1 million to Vanderbilt University Medical Center, helping support research connected to the Moderna vaccine. When the world learned about it, people called her a hero. But Dolly did not want that title. She simply said she was doing what anyone with the means to help should do. That is what makes her legacy different. Dolly never gave like someone trying to protect an image. She gave like someone who remembered what it felt like to have nothing. And perhaps that is why her love for children became so powerful. When asked about not having children of her own, Dolly once said that she had millions of children. Every child who received a book from the Imagination Library felt, in some way, like hers. The woman who once grieved the child she could never have had found a way to love millions of children she would never meet. and she carries one final secret. In 2015, Dolly Parton walked into a small room at Dollywood. She brought with her a handwritten letter. She placed it inside a wooden box. She sealed it. And then she left strict instructions that the box was not to be opened until 2045. By then, Dolly will be 99 years old if she is still alive. To this day, other than her and Carl Dean, no one knows what is written inside that letter. There are many theories. Some believe it's the ultimate truth about her 60-year marriage. Some think it's a message for a specific child. Others guess it's her spiritual will to America about something she never dared to say while alive. In her later years, Dolly also did something that shocked many. Both President Trump and President Biden offered to award her the Presidential Medal of Freedom, America's highest civilian honor. She turned it down both times. The first time she said, "My husband is sick. I can't leave to accept an award for personal pride when he needs me." The second time, she said bluntly, "I don't want to accept it for political reasons." For most people, turning down the nation's highest medal is unthinkable. But for Dolly, Carl is more important than glory. And she has one final wish. She doesn't want to be buried at the Country Music Hall of Fame. She doesn't want a grand mausoleum. She wants to be laid to rest near the cabin where she was born, in the Smoky Mountains. She explained it with profound simplicity. "I was born there. I want to go back there. There is no place on earth I call home." A billionaire legend choosing to rest in peace amidst the impoverished mountains. The barefoot little girl of yesteryear will return exactly to where she started. The woman who taught the world how to love. Today, Dolly Parton is 78 years old. She still lives in Tennessee, still wakes up early to write music before the sun comes up. Her marriage to Carl has entered its 6th decade. Her health is fading. She walks a little slower. Her hands bear the traces of thousands of shows, but her spirit remains unbroken. When asked about her legacy, she doesn't talk about the hit songs. She doesn't talk about the awards. She talks about the kids, about the families, about the people who needed help, and she was there. She says, "I don't want to be a monument. I just want people to remember that I tried to be kind." And perhaps that is the most valuable takeaway from this story. True success isn't about what you accumulate. It's about what you give away. Kindness is a form of strength. Humility is a form of power. It's okay to break as long as you have the courage to stand back up. And you are never defined by where you start. In a world where everyone is desperate to be seen, Dolly Parton chose to see the people around her. The barefoot little girl didn't just find a way out of poverty. She turned back, reached out her hand, and pulled the rest of the world through the storm with her. And that, far beyond any prestigious award, is the most brilliant legacy Dolly leaves behind for this world. Some stories aren't just worth hearing. They are worth carrying in our hearts as a reminder of kindness. If this article touched you, please share it to spread the message of healing. And if it were you, writing a letter to your future self 20 years from now, when the vanity has faded and only the core essentials remain, what would you write? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel as we continue our journey of uncovering the untold stories of the legends who shaped the world we live in.